Larry Kudlow here for Colonial Metals Group. Ask yourself, is your retirement protected? Gold is the one asset that's surged through every war and economic shock. Please call 800-621-3908. That's 800-621-3908. Or just visit freegoldguide.com/Kudlow to claim your free 2025 Gold Guide. You'll learn how to protect your IRA or 401k and could qualify for up to $7,500 in free silver. That's freegoldguide.com/Kudlow.
Get ready for back to school with H&M. From mix and match basics to new denim styles, find their favorites for in and out of the classroom at your nearest H&M and on hm.com.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Remembering 2017 when President Donald Trump said that his campaign had been spied on, that he had caught them? Here's what Senator Chuck Schumer had to say.
Taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them. And we need the intelligence community. We don't know what's going on. Look at the Russian hacking. Without the intelligence community, we wouldn't have discovered it. They are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
Of course, we now know that there was no Russian hacking and no evidence thereof. It's just another false claim. So on, I guess it was July 18th, 2025, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, declassified documents that definitively proved that former President Barack Obama and his administration officials manufactures and politicized intelligence to create the narrative of Russian interference to benefit Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential election. These documents include a report and emails proving that pre-election intelligence assessments concluded Russia was not attempting to influence the election through cyber attacks, which Gabbard argued contradicted the January 27th intelligence community assessment. So many have asked, will anybody pay the price? Where there'll be consequences? Will anyone be arrested? Well, now the answer appears to be yes. Attorney General Pam Bondi has directed a federal prosecutor to commission a grand jury to look over evidence related to the Russiagate conspiracy. It is currently unclear whether former President Barack Obama himself could be a target of the grand jury. There is a cogent argument that Obama may be immune because of the recent Supreme Court decision granting immunity to American presidents and former presidents. Although criminal defense attorney David Schoen has very articulately argued that if Obama were first impeached, and he can be impeached even though he's left office, he would then be potentially a target for criminal prosecution. Although impeachment requires articles of impeachment to pass the House and for a 2/3 vote in the U.S. Senate. So let's put Barack Obama aside. Let me suggest those who should be charged with seditious conspiracy and treason. That list would include Vice President Joe Biden, former CIA Director John Brennan, former FBI Director James Clapper, former FBI Director James Comey, Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor, Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, the Acting Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, Hillary Rotten Clinton, FBI agent Peter Strzok, and also Lisa Page, Valerie Jarrett, Ben Rhodes, the National Security Advisor under Obama, John Carlin, Mary McCord, James Baker, Jonathan Moffa, Michael Cortman, David Laufman, Sally Yates, Bruce Orr of the FBI, his wife Nellie Orr of Fusion GPS, UN Ambassador Samantha Power, former Justice Department official Lisa Monaco, Dennis McDonough, Jim Rybicki, Bill Priceep of the FBI, former British intelligence agent Christopher Steele, Richard Dearlove, former Ambassador Alexander Stauner, CIA informant and operative Stephen Halper, Professor Joseph Mifsud, if he can be found, Sidney Blumenthal, who I think is one of the chief architects of this seditious conspiracy, Cody Shearer, former DNC chairman and Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, Jonathan Weiner, John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, Cheryl Mills, Hillary Clinton's henchwoman, Heath Samuelson, former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Robbie Mook, silent Robert Mueller, who ran the witch hunt on paper, but the single most corrupt former federal prosecutor in American history, Andrew Weissman, who was the de facto boss of the Mueller witch hunt, Peter Radzik, Rachel Brand, Matthew Axelrod, Mary Jacoby, Preet Bharara, Josh Campbell, Jennifer Palmieri, Sir Andrew Wood, Robert Hannigan, Alexandra Chalupa, Michael Sussman, Dmitry Alperovich, and the officials from the DNC, CrowdStrike, and Fusion GPS, including Glenn Simpson, lawyer Mark Elias, and, of course, former FBI Director Christopher Wray. That's not to mention the prosecutors in my bogus case. That would be Jeannie Rhee, Aaron Zelinsky, Adam Judd, and Michael Mirando, as well as Jonathan Kravis, whose real name is Jonathan Kravis. So in case anybody's looking for the definitive list, I think there it is. I think those are the people who should be brought before the grand jury in question. I think they are the same people who should face justice. Now, because this was an ongoing conspiracy, and because the final act of this conspiracy was the illicit and illegal raid on Mar-a-Lago, which is in the state of Florida, President Trump's palatial home and club there, I think we now realize that the purpose of that raid was to try to get back the documents that proved that the Russian collusion hoax was indeed just that, a hoax. And therefore, that allows Pam Bondi to call witnesses in front of a grand jury in the state of Florida. It also means that criminal indictments for seditious conspiracy and, yes, treason could be brought in the state of Florida. Florida, where you could actually have a fair trial. Once everybody I have named is behind bars, and only at that point can the swamp in Washington, D.C. be drained. This is a huge development. My hat is off to Pam Bondi. Many have wondered whether or not she would have the stones, I guess I would say, to move forward on the largest single abuse of power in American political or governmental history. And it is now absolutely clear that the perpetrators I just listed knew that the Steele dossier was a fraud, knew also that there was no online hack of the Democrat National Committee, not by Russian intelligence or anyone else, and now the entire conspiracy is crumbling down. It's amazing to me that there are those in the fake news media who continue to claim that the assertions of Tulsi Gabbard are not conclusive when in fact they are. And they attempt to conflate the fact that, yes, there was a Russian Facebook bot farm effort to sow chaos in our election. They spent less than $200,000 in an election in which all candidates, parties, and super PACs spent $8.9 billion. So any effort by the Russians was a drop in the bucket, and it was most definitely based on content not designed to help Donald Trump, because at various times their messaging was completely incoherent. Sometimes it was pro-Hillary, sometimes it was anti-Hillary, sometimes it was pro-Trump, sometimes it was anti-Trump. The only thing that is certain is whoever was writing this stuff had English as a second language. In the meantime, the most latest example of Orwellian technological horrors unfolding right before our very eyes, disgraced former CNN host Jim Acosta interviewed an AI rendition of a child who was murdered in the Parkland school shooting in an attempt to manipulate the masses into supporting gun control. Acosta asked this AI rendition of the child what it would do to stop gun control, and the computer simulation replied, "I believe in a mix of stronger gun control laws mental health support, and community engagement. We need to create safe space for conversations and connections, making sure everyone feels seen and heard. It's about building a culture of kindness and understanding. Terrifyingly, the parents of the dead child said they would spend hours talking to this AI simulation as if it was their son. They plan to put the AI likeness on stage at some point to perform debates in favor of gun control. Social media reaction display was almost uniformly one of disgust. The poor, grieving parents are being exploited by AI companies and activists who want to profit and promote their agenda of suffering, similar to an episode of The Twilight Zone or The Black Mirror, if you remember that. This type of technology must be banned for the betterment of society and quickly before this sort of insanity becomes normalized. Meanwhile, no one wants to talk about the use of psychotropic drugs in almost every one of these mass shootings. Why is that missing from the entire dialogue? If you're just tuning in, I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. As the reality sets in that the far-left Muslim extremist Zohran Mamdani will more than likely be the next mayor of New York City, that's causing more mainstream Democrats, such as Senator Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, to support him. She actually appeared with the Ayatollah Mamdani at a forum and confirmed that he, quote, stands for mainstream Democrat values. Elizabeth Warren said of Mamdani's policies, when someone stands up and says, I will lead this country by making it more affordable, and here are my plans, real plans to deliver on childcare, plans to deliver on housing, plans to deliver, well, we're going to experiment, we're going to try things on groceries. That is the Democrat message. Actually, that's not the message. What Mamdani has said is very clear. He said he's going to pay for all of his new program and free everything, free health care, free bus rides, free everything, by increasing taxes on, his words, white people. He said it, I didn't. His policies actually include banning immigration enforcement in the city of New York, hiking taxes on the wealthy, as I say, particularly targeting white people, his words, instituting rent controls that means that landlords could never be able to upgrade their properties or increase rents, subsidizing housing and health care, creating a hate crime task force to police free speech, that's Orwellian, and using the government to nationalize grocery stores. These are now evidently the mainstream Democrat values, as Senator Warren finally admitted. On top of all this, he wants to defund the police. He wants to do away with cash bail. And he says that violence is a social construct, which leads me to believe that he intends to fling open the doors of Rikers Island and let all of the inmates there go. This is a chaos for my many friends in New York City, but the polling remains constant, even with three candidates opposing him. Today, if you added the combination of the three, it would be a horse race to say the least. But with former Mayor Eric Adams carrying the largest unfavorable rating I have ever seen by an American politician, hitting 70% unfavorable in the most recent poll that I have seen, with Andrew Cuomo refusing to drop from the race, with a unfavorable rating at 58. And the only candidate here who seems to be steadily but slowly gaining is Curtis Sliwa, but even his unfavorable rating is in the high 40s. I think that is a result of more than 20 years on radio talking about controversial subjects. So I fear for my many friends in New York City, but now it's very clear that the Democrat Party, the once great party of John F. Kennedy and Harry Truman, and even Franklin Roosevelt, is now the party of AOC, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Jasmine Crockett, and the Ayatollah Mamdani. This is a disaster for New York City. If you're just tuning in, I'm Roger Stone, and you're in the Stone Zone. Whatever you do, stick with us because, well, we've got more just on the other side.
Greg Kelly here for Colonial Metals Group, China's leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II, one that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Go to freegoldguide.com/Kelly or call 800-655-5186 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
Hey, I'm Frank, and I have hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Before starting Cosentyx, I was so uncomfortable with my symptoms, like not being able to sleep on white sheets or wear white clothes. Now I can appreciate the little things.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if allergic to Cosentyx. Get checked for TB before starting. Increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like TB or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if IBD symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
You're stronger than HS. Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
10 years from today, Lisa Schneider will trade in her office job to become the leader of a pack of dogs. As the owner of her own dog rescue, that is. A second act made possible by the reskilling courses Lisa's taking now with AARP to help make sure her income lives as long as she does. And she can finally run with the big dogs. And the small dogs, who just think they're big dogs. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Learn more at aarp.org/skills.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. And now it appears that we will finally have justice in this country, as Attorney General Pam Bondi has impaneled a grand jury, reportedly in Florida, and authorized a federal prosecutor to begin taking testimony to indict those involved in the greatest single abuse of power in American political history, the Russian collusion hoax. Now, to single out one name on the list of individuals who must be prosecuted for Russiagate, I have to mention Andrew Weissmann, who served as the lead prosecutor in Robert Mueller's special counsel's office, conceivably the most crooked prosecutor in U.S. history. Weissmann got his start as a prosecutor lying to cover up mob murders in Brooklyn. Then he destroyed the Enron company. He keeps pointing to that prosecution and court decision repeatedly, never mentions that the conviction he won was unanimously overturned 9-0 by the U.S. Supreme Court, who criticized Weissmann for prosecutorial misconduct. He also destroyed their accounting company, Arthur Andersen. But Weissmann knew from his tenure as the FBI general counsel that the Steele dossier, the phony report used to justify the FISA warrants that were used to spy on Donald Trump's campaign, and the claim that the DNC was hacked by Russian intelligence were a fraud. But he used them as a rationale for the appointment of Robert Mueller anyway. Now we know, of course, that Mueller was non compos mentis, and Weissmann was the de facto head of the witch hunt. Weissmann was particularly nasty in how he attempted to make an example of yours truly. I was never sent a target letter. I was never asked to appear before a grand jury. But every 2 or 3 days, Weissman would leak another story saying that Stone is in Mueller's crosshairs. The noose tightens around Stone. Stone's indictment expected momentarily in a Chinese water torture campaign of terror against me and my family. After arranging my indictment and putting me in a kangaroo court where I could not adequately defend myself, as evidenced by the fact that the chief prosecutor in my case, Jeannie Rhee, previously represented the Clinton Foundation in their illegal computer email case, a case that I had written extensively about in a critical fashion. But corrupt federal judge Amy Berman Jackson believed that there was no conflict of interest. Weissman went to the New York Times following my pardon and said that I should be brought up on before a grand jury and harassed further, which is ironic because he had 3 years to bring me to the grand jury and never did. Of all of the deep state lowlifes who should be prosecuted, convicted, and imprisoned, I would get particularly joy in seeing Weissman put in handcuffed and ushered into a cold cell. I put forward my entire list at the beginning of this show. We're going to be monitoring that situation in Florida very carefully. But to the many patriots listening to us today on the Stone Zone, let me just say, justice is coming. This is the justice that I and my family and so many of you have prayed for these many years. We have a president back in the White House who will recalibrate the scales of justice in this country and end the two-tiered justice system. This is Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone right here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial because we'll be back with more high-powered political news.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. We're back in the Stone Zone. The House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, sent subpoenas on Tuesday to prominent Democrats and Republicans for information related to deceased child sex trafficker and pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Individuals who have received subpoenas for Epstein-related testimony include former President Bill Clinton, who very clearly was on Epstein's plane, the Lolita Express, at least 26 times, and on Epstein's island a minimum of 3 times, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, former FBI Directors James Comey and Robert Mueller, former Attorney Generals Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder, William Barr, Jeff Sessions, and Alberto Gonzales, who was Attorney General under George W. Bush, as well as Trump's current Department of Justice for records related to the Epstein case. Now, let me be very clear. I'm in favor of full and complete disclosure of all government records regarding Jeffrey Epstein. I believe those records that have already been made public but have redactions should be completely and totally unredacted, with the exception of the fact that I think Epstein's victims should continue to be protected. In addition, it's being reported that the Trump administration is considering releasing the testimony of Epstein's pimp and accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, to the public as well. I believe that this would be a wise move. It's time to unearth as much information about the client list of Epstein and to dispel the Epstein hoax that Donald Trump had anything to do with the pedophile network. Now, I covered this in my 2015 book, The Clintons' War on Women, the longest chapter in the book, Orgy Island, Chapter 7. I had Epstein's entire little black book, his phone book. Not everyone in his phone book has been charged or is guilty of pedophilia. But what people don't know is that the butler who sold the book to a journalist circled the names of those in Epstein's book that he did believe were engaged in child sex trafficking and pedophilia. And I also had the FAA flight manifest, which tells you who was on Epstein's plane and when they flew and where they flew. And therefore, I'm highly confident that Donald Trump has no vulnerability at all. I base that largely on the fact that I have read the testimony of all of those Epstein victims who refused to settle for millions of dollars and continued their lawsuits against the pedophile sex trafficker, including that of Virginia Roberts Giuffre. I interviewed Giuffre for 6 hours, 2 3-hour sessions, and she told me that Donald Trump was the only public figure that was helpful in her lawsuit, and that the one and only time she saw Trump at Epstein's Palm Beach home, which I believe was the one and only time he was there, it was for a charitable fundraiser, and that Trump acted the perfect gentleman. There's no evidence that Donald Trump, unlike, say, Steve Bannon, ever went to Epstein's New York apartment, ever went to his Paris apartment, ever went to his ranch in New Mexico. So this idea that Democrats like Dick Durbin, who moved to quash any effort to release the Epstein list only a year ago, is now jumping up and down for full disclosure. I say yes. Let's let it all hang out. Let's see it all. What you're going to find is that the people who visited Epstein Islands and who were political figures were Democrats. Former President Bill Clinton, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, former U.S. Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, Bill Gates, and several other notables. But Donald Trump is among those who did not visit the island, so people need to give it up. It's no secret that China is quickly gobbling up American farmland and ranch land as part of that ruthless communist nation's ongoing plot of conquest and domination. It's amazing that a report by the U.S. Agriculture Department says that the Chinese communists only control 360 acres of land within the United States, when I know that they control over 370,000 acres of land in the state of Oklahoma alone. So how did this happen? Well, with ample help from the federal government and multinational corporations, of course. The U.S.-China Heartland Association, the USCHA, has been openly currying influence for years, adding former lawmakers to their board, and even having Joe Biden's ambassador to China, Nick Burns, headline their events while he was serving in that position. This network works closely with entities run by the Chinese Communist Party's United Front Work Department, which the FBI and the State Department have both called a tool for Chinese intelligence and influence activities. The USCHA, that is the U.S.-China Heartland Association, has regularly taken mayors from the Midwest on junkets to China in order to brainwash them into accepting their so-called investments into their communities. They're also seeding the universities, sending young scholars to China to groom the next generation to sell out their birthright. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has participated in these propaganda sessions, which have been supported by industry groups such as the U.S. Meat Export Federation, the U.S. Soybean Export Council, and the U.S. Grains Council. It's time for the U.S.-China Heartland Association to be banned, its collaborators punished, and all of its subversive investigations of selling farmland and ranch land to China be ended. I believe we need a law that prohibits the Communist Chinese or anyone who is fronting for them from purchasing any real estate, farmland, ranch land, airports, ports, toll roads, toll bridges, bridges and tunnels. All of these infrastructure facilities are being purchased by the Communist Chinese even as we speak. It is time to ban this. I hope President Trump is listening to the Stone Zone today. Meanwhile, the U.S. trade deficit with China has hit a 21-year low in the month of June. The U.S. trade deficit shrunk in June after a substantial drop in consumer goods imports, and the trade deficit with China shrank to the lowest point in more than 21 years, showing that Trump, America First trade policies, which everybody in the financial community in Wall Street predicted would lead to rampant inflation, out of control unemployment, and would actually grow the deficit, turned out to be completely and totally wrong. The President's America First trade policies are proven to be extraordinarily effective. In the month of June, the United States government ran a surplus for the first time since 2015. No one predicted that, but of course, Donald Trump. The overall trade gap with China shrank by 16% in June, down to $60.2 billion, according to reporting from the Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis. The trade gap with China dropped by nearly a third, down to $9.5 billion. This is the lowest it has been since 2004. Throughout 5 consecutive months of declining trade deficits with China, America has made up more than $22.2 billion. This is a stunning reduction of 70% of the trade deficit with China. During an appearance on CNBC, President Trump said, "We're getting very close to a deal. We're getting along with China very well." And in other words, he has China right where he wants them, in my opinion. President Trump is in a brilliant position to muscle more concessions out of China as they are forced to come to terms with who the real superpower is, and it isn't them. Their economy is in a shambles. Their leader, Deng Xiaoping, does not really trust his own military. Trump's renewal of American economic greatness is going just as planned, contrary to what all the talking heads on Wall Street have said. There's only one piece that is missing, and that is the necessary cut in interest rates by the Federal Reserve. I continue to be perplexed by the fact that Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell refuses to cut interest rates on the American people. The two indicators that Powell is supposed to use to make that determination are inflation and unemployment. But if you look at it, you will see that unemployment and inflation are either lower or at the exact same point that they were the last 4 times the Federal Reserve cut rates. And it's clear that the Federal Reserve cut rates twice at the end of last year in an attempt to boost the electoral prospects of first Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris. So it's Jerome Powell who's playing politics with our economy. It's Jerome Powell who is costing the American people billions of dollars, those who want to pay off their credit cards, those who want to purchase a home or a car. Meanwhile, Jerome Powell is presiding over a $2.5 billion renovation of his already palatial headquarters on Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. The head of the Federal Housing Finance Administration, Bill Pulte, whose family has been in the construction business for decades, and Donald Trump, who's a builder himself, comes from a long line of builders, both have questioned how anyone could spend $2.5 billion on a renovation. But now we learn that that includes a 70% cost overrun. It's almost unfathomable, but to make things worse, Jerome Powell testified before the Senate that the renovations do not anticipate a private elevator for the Fed board governors, a private dining room for the Federal Reserve governors, more marble, more fountains, or a majestic roof garden. Unfortunately, all those things are lies because the plans as approved by the Redevelopment Authority show that all of those things are anticipated in the ongoing renovation. It is really time for Jerome Powell to either cut rates on the American people or resign. I urge you to listen to our interview with Barry Habib, one of the country's foremost experts on both mortgages and the housing industry, this past Sunday, where he spoke extensively about the fact that a cut in interest rates now would make America's economy boom as never before. Meanwhile, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is imploring President Trump to give a pardon to former New York Congressman George Santos, the controversial New York congressman who was expelled by his peers for lying his way into office and then thrown into prison for a lengthy sentence of 7 years. MTG, as she's called, said in her letter to the Justice Department, "I worked with Mr. Santos on many issues and can attest to his willingness and dedication to serving his constituents. While his crimes warrant punishment, many of my colleagues who I serve with have committed far worse offenses, yet have faced 0 criminal charges." Well, she makes a strong point. Santos was only jailed for being a liar because he made a fool of everyone in Congress, making a mockery of the electoral process with his colorful films. Congress is famously filled with liars, thieves, shysters, scallywags, con men, hucksters. I'm thinking of Dan Goldman. I'm thinking of Jamie Raskin. I'm thinking of Adam Pencil-neck Schiff. They've all been in this inception from the beginning. So how come Santos is the only one who gets removed and jailed? Probably has to do more with Santos's pro-MAGA voting record. This is a clear miscarriage of justice. Now, I say this in view of the fact that Santos gave an interview back when I was being charged, saying that the 40-month sentence that I was ordered to serve, even though no misstatement I made to Congress was material, and I had no motive to lie because there was no Russian collusion to lie about, he thought my sentence was appropriate. I do think 7 years is excessive in the case of George Santos, but whether or not he will be pardoned remains to be seen. The other bad actor here that I really think should be brought to justice is the judge in my case, Amy Berman Jackson. She has a long history of ignoring the U.S. Constitution and a deep political bias. In 2013, she rejected arguments from the Catholic Church that Obama's CARES requirements that employers provide cost-free coverage to contraceptive services in spite of being contrary to their religious beliefs. She was overturned in her ruling by the Supreme Court. It was in 2017 that Judge Amy Berman Jackson dismissed the wrongful death suit against Hillary Clinton, filed by two of the families who lost loved ones in Benghazi. The families argued that Clinton had done little to help their sons and then lied to cover it up. And then, of course, there's the whole question of her rulings against Paul Manafort. And in my case, the Mueller investigators indicted 17 Russians, claiming that they had hacked the Democrat National Committee. That case never went to discovery. There was never any proof of that. But the prosecutors argued that I must stand trial in front of Judge Jackson because they said that they would introduce at my trial evidence that was gleaned from search warrants in that case, and therefore the cases were related, and I must stand trial in front of Judge Jackson. Of course, the prosecutors provided no such evidence whatsoever, but by that time, everyone had forgotten about it. If you're just tuning in, I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and, well, we'll be right back.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs, but luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
And you're back in the Stone Zone. Project Veritas on Tuesday released a bombshell story from a whistleblower alleging that former U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr, along with media figure Armstrong Williams, actually ran an illegal immigration visa fraud scheme for elites and billionaires. Patricia Leilas, the whistleblower from a former Brazilian journalist, came forward, and she is now currently in hiding, and told Project Veritas that she was prosecuted after reporting that the Attorney General, Bill Barr, and media figure Armstrong Williams were engaged in this illegal scheme to the FBI. It is way more easy to defraud the immigration system and the government more than people think, she said. I have absolute proof, and because of that, of what Williams and Barr have done, she said. Leilas alleges that wealthy foreigners were obtaining U.S. visas through a sham company, and Bill Barr not only knew about it, but was actively participating in the scheme. This is not the first time that I have been contacted myself by a whistleblower who alleged that Williams and Barr engaged in illegal activities. This is a story that we will be tracking very closely. In the meantime, we heard that FBI Director Kash Patel has been formally asked to assist the Texas authorities in tracking down and arresting those rogue Democrat lawmakers who fled the state in order to deny a quorum in the lower house of the Texas legislature and therefore halt a critical redistricting vote. Texas Governor Greg Abbott and the Republican-led legislature issued arrest warrants for the rogue Democrats after they abandoned their posts and fled across state lines, some of them to New York, but most of the others to Illinois, to deny a House quorum during a constitutionally mandated special session. This lawless stunt is quickly blasted as anti-democratic sabotage of the legislative process. Now, with time running out in the special session, federal law enforcement may be joining the effort to bring these fugitives to justice. Even Rhino Senator John Cornyn, never a fan among grassroots conservatives, was compelled to act. In a letter sent Monday to Director Patel, Cornyn urged the FBI to deploy federal resources to help track down the AWOL Democrat Texas legislators and assist in their arrest. I have asked FBI Director Kash Patel to work with Greg Abbott and Texas law enforcement to investigate potential criminal acts, including bribery, and to hold legislators accountable who have fled the state in a shameful attempt to stall the legislative process in the Texas House. Now, I find all of this hand-wringing about the redistricting efforts in Texas to be kind of amusing, because in New York and in California and in Illinois, they have used an invasion of the census by illegal immigrants who are not U.S. citizens into the census count, and then used the census count for congressional districting in order to ensure more Democrat-leaning seats. But they don't complain about that. So now, when Republicans finally get tough, and they're finally prepared to draw a map, unlike the map in, say, New Jersey, where it would be easy to draw a fairer map that would have a more balanced congressional breakdown, but I think Republicans are down to 2 seats in the entire state. Now that Republicans in Texas are finally acting for an honest reapportionment and redistricting, Democrats have fled the state in a criminal act, and they're raising money to do it. Backing them in this play is Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. We have a first-hand report, that a number of the perps in this particular crime are hanging out at a Q Center in suburban Chicago. And we will watch very carefully to see if the FBI begins making arrests. In the meantime, thank you for joining us again today in the Stone Zone. Here we talk politics, news, history, food, style, and once in a while we try to take your calls. So we enjoy it every single day. We try to bring you the point of view that you don't hear every place else. I'm a 40-year veteran of American politics. I spent 40 years in the corroded rectum of the two-party system, and I like to bring you the stone-cold truth. Thanks for joining us today. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.